This is Joe LaGuire, Managing Director for Blackmore. I've been in private equity for 20 plus years. I want to welcome you to Blackmore Partners, Inc., which is the parent company of Blackmore Connects. This is a Blackmore Connects webinar for those who have private equity experience and as well as those that don't. And today we're going to be talking about improving your portfolio company. So there are playbooks, and in these days, you got to fly ahead of the plane. You got to fly ahead of your destination and be prepared with the playbook. And today we're going to talk with Paul, and Paul's an operator partner for private equity. So they hire him to come in and assist the executive team to go to the next level of performance to bring in those returns early. So give us a quick overview, and I'm going to make you the presenter here in a moment. What are we going to cover today? And why is it important? Our audience are executives who either have run multiple portfolio companies in private equity, and they're going to be getting into another one soon, or they're executives who haven't and will be. Tell us what's in store.
First, we're going to go over a little bit of background on the kind of things that you might see moving into a private equity situation, which are different than what you may be used to in a public or corporate or mid-market company environment. One of those is speed.
Yes.
A real emphasis on speed. And the other part of this is, how do we get the whole organization involved in exactly what we've titled transformational productivity and growth? I'm going to share some examples of the kind of challenges you might see and some examples of what transformational productivity and growth looks like. And then we're actually going to follow a PE deal from the acquisition all the way through a repeatable process, which got them from 50% on time to 97% on time, while taking 22% of their inventory and preparing the company for a sale, which was done to a strategic at a above market.
All righty, we're going to get started here in just a moment. Let me make sure that we're recording. Okay, we can go ahead and show my screen. I want to welcome everyone. We're going to start in a few minutes. A lot of people hustling in to the webinar, so we'll be starting in a few moments with our special guest on private equity improvement strategy, which is key. Paul will be with us in just a moment. While we're getting started, I want to just do a quick poll, and I want you to, let's see, this one. So go ahead and you'll see a poll launch here, and it's going out to you. Go ahead and answer it. Have you considered a career transition from, if you're in the public markets, whatever, into private equity? And by the way, if you do, one of the things I would love to have you do is I may be able to pay for you to be a guest in our Blackmore conference. It's 45th conference in a row is upcoming. So please keep that in mind. So if you're just joining us, there's a poll. Please go ahead and okay. So we're still waiting for people to get into the space. I see them queuing up to get in. So we're going to just wait for a few more people to get in, and we'll get started here. And let's see, the audience view. Yeah. By the way, 75 answered this poll from the point of view of they want to get in. Okay. 73% are actively exploring opportunities in the private equity space. Well, you've come to the right place. Let's go to the next one. We're going to close that out, and we'll share the numbers for you. and 15% of you aren't interested. Well, if you're not interested, why are you here in private equity? Because everything we do at Blackmore is private equity oriented. It's all about getting yourself prepared. I don't know if you know, but in the private equity space, the turnover is 74%. 74%. Okay. Okay. Do we have any of my IT people on? Just want to make sure you're, just in case something goes wrong, you're there to back me up. Chris Melton is on. I'm working on a backup computer today. It is not my normal one, and it is definitely glitchy. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you to Blackmore Partners, Inc., which is the parent company of Blackmore Connects. This is a Blackmore Connects webinar for those who have private equity experience and as well as those that don't. This is Gerald Aguirre, Managing Director for Blackmore. I've been in private equity for 20 plus years, and guess what? I still don't know it. I attend about 26 conferences, 6 Blackmore Connects conferences, and 20 ACG, AMAA, iGlobal, McGuire Woods conferences every year, and I attend them because I'm always trying to catch up with the ever-changing world of private equity. And if you would like to be a guest in one of our private equity conferences, if you go to the chat, okay, the chat, I put an email that I'm going to type here. I put my email address. Send me your resume and along with your biggest P&L, and I'll put you in for consideration to be a guest at the 45th conference, virtual private equity conference since 2017. We are the largest, the longest lasting conferences for private equity and who want to meet backable execs like yourself on this call and executives who want to network and learn about what is going on in private equity so you can design a value proposition that's relevant. As a way of background, Blackmore has been around since 2005. We got started by Tom Turpin of Allied Capital. And one day I was introducing Tom to 6 executives just like you. He's offered to meet with them. And then he gave me a bombshell during the phone call, pre-phone call with these execs because we were having 6 back-to-back phone calls. He said, Gerald, private equity doesn't need executives. Allied Capital doesn't need executives. And I said, Tom, why did you set up this call with the executives like who we're about to talk to? You know, they don't, if you don't need them, this is a little bit odd and embarrassing. He says, Gerald, what we need is executives with deals. And I said, Tom, these executives, I didn't know to even ask them about deals. And they're looking for either board positions, they're looking for consulting, maybe operating partner roles like Paul, who's leading this webinar. I don't get it. I don't know. What are we going to talk about given that you don't need executives? And I don't think they have deals. We might get lucky with one of them, but they don't have deals. He says, that's where you come in, Gerald. I want you to come up with a measurable, repeatable process to help backable executives monetize their background into an acquisition-based deal thesis and then help them create a deal by buying a company, and we'll fund it. They're going to get salary, bonus, and equity. Salary typically higher than the market, EBITDA improvement bonuses, which they can either take off the table or put in for more equity, and a minimum of 5% equity and potential for up to 15% equity in the company by various means. So that's what, and you, Gerald, and your firm will give you 2% of the enterprise value, but even better, if you keep your money in, you can keep as little or as much as you want. You can get 3 times cash on cash. That's our minimum target return. We've done in excess of 10 times. And rarely, but it does happen, do we get a zilch. So it's up to you. So that's how Blackmore got started, 24 plus acquisitions, including add-ons. So Blackmore is an independent sponsor where we help executives like you to put deals together. We have a talent division that works on hundreds of searches, CFOs, COOs, general managers. You're likely, if you're at this webinar, you're all in the database. Private equity firms, when they hire people versus when we're working with you to do a deal, when they're hiring, it's very granular on the criteria for hiring. So don't be disappointed with when you apply for a role, we can't describe every criteria. It's just that it's very specific criteria. Just know it's not personal. So there's the talent group. Then we have the conference group. Again, 45th conference is coming up on the 25th. And if you go here for executives, you can find out more about what it does for you. I'd love to have you as a guest. Yeah, it's very, very useful. Typically, there's about 25 PE firms and as much as 50 executives like you. So it's an opportunity to network with other executives virtually and other PE firms. So welcome to another Blackmore partner, Blackmore Connects educational conference. And today we're going to be talking about improving your portfolio company. So there are playbooks. And in these days, you got to fly ahead of the plane. You got to fly ahead of your destination and be prepared with a playbook. And today we're going to talk with Paul, and Paul's an operator partner for private equity. So they hire him to come in and assist the executive team to go to the next level of performance to bring in those returns early. So Paul Vregel has been doing this. Paul, how many years now?
25 plus years as for a better business, and another dozen years ahead of that in the marine business. And when I left Amoco, in charge of new technology for the computer group global-wide.
And so, in the oil and gas, that's now part of Chevron?
They're part of BP now. Yeah.
BP. Okay, it's BP. Yeah, really great. What a background. It's really great. And I want to mention speed is critical. Getting your playbook. I think of it, Paul, my brother used to play for the NFL 12 years, and one of the first teams he played with was the New York Jets. And he would tell me that Parcells, every practice game, they would work the typical plays that would happen every game, but they would also prepare for the plays that just in case it happened, maybe 1%, 0.5%, they were ready in the DNA of the team, right? They were ready. And I look at that in the private equity world. You've got to have your head on a swivel, have a playbook, and we're going to really delve into that. Paul, to you, I'm ready with your slides. You're looking great on the screen. Go ahead. I'm going to be quiet every once in a while. If there's questions, people will be putting those in the chat. And once again, if you want to be a guest in the conference, send me your resume right now. Okay, thank you. Hey, we got the slides. You're looking good. You're all good on this side.
We get hooked up here just a second. There we go. Okay, igniting transformational productivity and growth. Here's our agenda. Some background, a little bit I touched on already. We're going to talk about some outcomes in transformational productivity. We are going to look at the practical dynamics of implementation. This is not a theoretical exercise. These are the things that work on the ground every day to get a whole organization moving quickly to where you want to be, and then what that whole repeatable process for transformational productivity and growth is. You'll hear me say often, speed is essential. In following up on what Gerald said, in football, people say speed, there's no defense for speed. And same thing applies here. No defense for speed. Out-execute the naysayers and the people who aren't sure that something can be done. We're going to execute. And then some time for Q&A. If you have questions as we go through, shoot them in the chat. Happy to take them there. And Gerald will give me a heads up if there's something that we should address at that time. There's our agenda. So I'm going to start by looking at some situations and challenges you might see as an executive in a PE company. First of all, we mentioned need for accelerated change and growth. Any organization that's coming into a PE ownership, there is a change in the speed of anything that needs to happen, driven by a need for returns. And so that's a difference that you will see. in any PE situation. You may also see a number of other things. Sometimes you're working with the departure of a founder. Sometimes that means lack of process and infrastructure. So you need to figure out a way to recreate that. Customer threats to leave. Sometimes that's performance. Sometimes they're not sure. New owner, what's the situation? Technology implementations that are late, over budget, technology that's not used in the company. Maybe they have a history of failed initiatives, which ends up with low morale, change-resistant culture, failed acquisition integration. We're actually going to talk about one of those. And all of those have the framework of time. It's the most critical resource in the equation. I listed all of those things you might encounter. We've actually encountered all of those in the work that we've done, and I've just shown here example clients. I'm not going to read through the list. You can check it out quickly, but in a broad array of manufacturing, distribution, and services clients. What do we mean by transformational productivity and growth? Well, here's an automotive case. They're a tier 1, tier 2 supplier to Ford and Chrysler, lower quartile performance, and had quality and delivery issues. So good part of their production had to go through a third-party audit before they could actually ship it. In line of our discussion of speed, I'm going to just show the results at the end. We resolved 75 issues in that company, everything from orders to production to purchasing to manufacturing, design, everything resolved in 30 days. Not on a list to be resolved and done as we built what I've called a visual twin, which we'll look at later, part of the repeatable process. With that, they got a 30% increase in earnings in 6 months without firing anybody. We developed transition completely from a blame culture to improvement-seeking culture. With that and the bulletproof processes, they pursued and achieved in 12 months their first ever business with Toyota. For those of you that may have some exposure to automotive, you know, getting started there or trying to break in there, particularly with Toyota, it can be a 5-year deal and very uncertain that you're actually going to get there. So this is 12 months and pursued and achieved. And with that, then they doubled sales and tripled earnings in the next 18 months. That's one example of productivity and growth. Here's another, aerospace defense, 80-year-old company, overburdened with 80 years of legacy regulations. And their operating model was really driven by a few experts operating in silos. So tough to scale, tough to get beyond exactly where they were. A couple of things that we did there: reduced the engineering change by $2 million, increased the cash flow by matching what they were actually doing to the reporting requirements to the Department of Defense, streamlined their engineering flow and project, literally went through their whole process, and in the end, multiplied their value in sale to a strategic buyer. There are a couple cases. Here's a case that we're actually going to follow through for the rest of the time here. The call that I got from the PE portfolio company CFO was, we're at 50% on-time delivery. When can you be here? Here's the quick summary of the situation. Failed acquisition integration. Private equity with a sponsor bought the company. They proceeded to buy a company twice their size. They wanted to integrate one of the locations to try to get some improvement in profitability. The consulting company that they hired didn't accomplish that in a year and had driven them to 50% on-time delivery. As you can imagine, discouraged people, broken processes, and lots of obsolete technology. And Windows and Apple technology stack. They had a new ERP selected and configured by the operation that they were shutting down. And it was clear to the employees that were doing that that they were then going to be fired. And one location was made to stock, the other location is made to order. That's part of the integration. All of their inventory was safe in location A1A in the ERP, and none of the warehouse was labeled. A quick flash to the end, got them to 96+% on-time delivery while reducing inventory by 22%, and they were sold to a strategic for an above-market multiple. Let's look at how that happens. One of the points I'm going to make up front is technology is the last thing you need for digital transformation. Sounds incongruous, but I'll make that point as we go through. Lots of things to do before you rely on technology to get someplace. Here's 5 key elements for transformational productivity and growth. This is all part of the repeatable process. So I'm going to go over these quickly, and then we'll touch each one detail. First one is clear business objectives, so people know where you're going. Address the people and process issues before technology. Know the data you really need to operate, monitor, and improve. Identify the source and quality of that data. That's always a big issue. And then use all of that information to select the technology that meets your needs on an ongoing basis. So you're not just doing what somebody came back from a trade show with. You really have an environment that enables you to identify and implement technology quickly. Let's go through those things. First, clear business objectives. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit, and then what we did as we went through. A couple of key points focused on business outcomes, not what we did, what the outcomes we want. Some clear measures of that, and know how you're creating value that way. Relevant and relatable to everybody. Supported by the right actions, hire the right people to help you, and also by funding. You are providing the investment you need for that. In the specialty chemical case, clear objective was get to 80% on time in 8 months. I asked them, what's your runway? This is what they said, and as it turned out, they have a number of their pretty big portion of their portfolio was in cosmetics. There's a fairly big validation requirement on the product, which was restricting the ability of customers to leave despite the bad performance. They had also said, we have a customer service problem. Well, if everybody believes you have a customer service problem, then everybody points at customer service. One of the first things we did is, let's change the goal here, change what we're trying to accomplish as great service to customers, which is something that everybody can relate to. The words matter, the actions matter. So pay attention to that as you're going through. People and process before technology. Fix it. Those are the words that I heard from my boss. Had joined Amoco. I was trained as a naval architect and marine engineer, and I was hired by Amoco to manage ship construction in Spain. The Spaniards were building 1,000-foot oil tankers for us. 2 weeks after I was hired, I was on a plane to Spain, and my instruction set is figure out what you're supposed to do and do that. Work was going great. A year later, one of these ships came into Lisbon for its guarantee repair, and we did some inspections. One of the inspections we did was the main engine bearings. This is a 30,000 horsepower diesel engine. And by the way, this story is 100% relevant to this repeatable process. It's the origin of discovering just how powerful this was. These just give you an indication of size of things that we're dealing with. I called my boss in Chicago and described for him what the situation was. He listened for a second. He said, those 2 words, fix it. And I'm at the other end of the phone waiting for the rest of the conversation, and there wasn't any. I was 23. I had no authority. I had no domain knowledge, no staff, no budget. I didn't speak Spanish or Portuguese. We didn't have a contract with the engine builder. We had a contract with the shipyard. And the engine was built under license from a company in Denmark. I get those 2 words, fix it. I go to Spain, ask the engine manufacturer, engine builder, what's your plan? You surely must have something to deal with this. They looked at me and said, we don't think we have a problem. We think the Danes have a problem because they designed the engine. We just built it according to what they said. I'm sitting in my hotel room in Spain, trying to figure out, okay, seems I've got nothing here, except I'm here. So being here, I am sure I can make something happen. It actually got worse. I went down on the floor to talk with the employees. Of course, they only spoke Spanish and I spoke English. But they communicated to me that management had told them that I was there to fix the problem, tell them exactly what to do to fix it. I didn't even know what they did. And this is a pretty dangerous situation because they would do anything I told them. And that certainly wasn't going to get us to fixing this. I decided to turn my lack of knowledge to my advantage. And I communicated exactly to them, I don't know anything about this, but you guys do this every day. You know what you do every day. Let's work together. I'm going to ask a lot of questions, work together and see if we can connect what we see in the process to what we see on the bearings. Well, worked beyond my wildest dreams. In a few weeks, we not only fixed the issues in the bearings, but we permanently raised their manufacturing capability. And because of the way that I invented or was forced to do this, the whole process and results were owned by the management and the employees. I was astounded at the power of this, that it could apply not only to solving one problem, as we were dealing with here, this could apply to a whole organization and, in fact, could extend to a whole company. So out of that, I took a couple key principles, which are key to what we're working with today. 90% of the issues that waste time and money and produce poor results are embedded in a company's processes and interactions, what they do every day. And process and interaction means everything, front to back, top to bottom. Customer interaction, sales, process change, costing, hiring, order processing, inventory, production, the whole set of processes and interactions, all interconnected. There is a caveat here, which is that usually those work differently than documented or expected, which is certainly clear in the case in Spain with the bearings. Second principle, key principle, good news. We have reporting to work every day, the world's experts at knowing what they actually do every day. Not that they are task experts, the world best in that. What they do, they absolutely know. No training required. Let's see how we use that. Well, let's go back to that. Why do processes differ from documentation and expectations? It's important to understand that. A couple areas. IT systems. Maybe the system as it exists didn't keep up with the business. Employees still need to do their work, and they are under pressure to do that, and they're going to find workarounds. One of the primary workarounds, Excel. What you end up with is Excel in many places in the company. Mentally raise your hand if you see that in your company. And all of those typically are disconnected. Product name in one sheet is different from product name in another sheet. And as you try to integrate the information, you get data that doesn't mean anything. It's unreliable. Ineffective design or capture. Maybe the tribal knowledge didn't get captured. Maybe some of it did, but not the critical pieces. Maybe it was the documentation just addresses the good case. I'm not inventing these out of thin air. All of these are things we've seen. So when the bad case happens, employees are on their own to make up or find a process. One exec said to me, we love processes. We have hundreds of them and new ones every day because we have to deal with this. Your ISO system, Was it written for the auditors or to actually effectively manage your business? Okay, lack of a change process. As the business changes, obviously, process will change to that. But some of that also happens when somebody comes up with an idea, goes to their supervisor and says, hey, look at this. We could do this. Supervisor looks at them and says, it's a good idea, but, if we had to do that, we have to get marketing involved. We got to get the manufacturing engineers involved. We got too many other things we're working on right now, but keep those good ideas coming. So when do you see the second idea? If you're lucky, you'll see one, but usually never. Even if you think you have a process, you change the document, but they're actually doing something different anyway. So the change in document doesn't mean anything, or it does mean something, and you write it up and train people, they don't understand it, or they understand it, but they're not bought in, they're not going to actually do it. So there's a whole set of things cascade, and growth by itself. We're doing something in one function, and we grow, and now that's distributed among different people or different functions, and that process never really gets revisited, kind of happens by osmosis, and now we're into that situation where we really don't know what the system is. This is really critical if you're trying to do this change in productivity and growth, because if you don't know what that system looks like, you are going to change things you shouldn't, miss things that you should, and repeat a lot of things that happened in the past that resulted in the employees being pretty much signed off on what you want to do. Here's an example of that. Here's what one client's documentation said. This was a $300 million automotive supplier, and this was their number one warranty issue. That's what their documentation said. We looked at this, and this is what we found. And I know you can't read it in detail, but there's 9 different functions. There's not 10 boxes, if you will. There's 100 different steps in this process. We identified 3 new Excel sheets that people weren't aware of and 2 new databases. So what do you do if that's the reality, but this is what people think? Well, there's a certain view of the problems in the work and the opportunities. With all goodwill, somebody has one view of that, and somebody else comes in, again, all goodwill, and they've got a different view of that. So how do those kind of things get resolved? Well, what's your position in the company? Who's your mentor? How fast can you argue on your feet? Maybe we got a chit-based system here. How many chits are you willing to invest? What's the political capital you're willing to invest in your solution? It's pretty clear that none of these are getting anywhere on actually resolving whatever the issue is. And it looks more like this than some sort of streamlined traffic flow. In fact, improvement can feel like squeezing a water balloon. I got it. No, actually, you may have fixed here, but it moved over here. So that could be a really frustrating situation, but that's reality if you're working in that environment. What do we see in the market? Gallup and other organizations report that 70% of change initiatives fail to achieve their objectives. If you will, just put in the chat some of the things you've seen that have been obstacles to getting to change initiatives that you wanted to do. We'll continue. Gerald will holler at me if we see something we need to address. But the other disturbing thing about this, and the reason we really need to focus on getting transformational change, is that number hasn't changed for 20 years. There's something different than the traditional way of getting large-scale change in a company needs to happen. A couple of the major reasons that surveys claim are, one, lack of engagement, and the second, employee resistance to change. These are floated as, well, that's why we couldn't get it. We've been doing this for 25 years, as we said in the beginning, and our experience is employees don't necessarily resist the change itself. What they really don't like is being a changee and not having any voice. But if you engage them in participation and contribution, they will change in a heartbeat. So that's a key piece that's part of this repeatable process. Just a quick review, we saw this before, but situation, failed acquisition, 50% on time, discouraged people, broken process, unreliable data, obsolete. This is a tough situation. The question is, where do you start?
And before you go any farther, just want to mention, folks, the chat. If you have anything, any questions, please put it in the chat and we'll answer these questions. This is amazing, a webinar, one of the best ever on transformational change. These are definitely the must-dos, the principles that you have to keep in mind. Paul, this is amazing. I just want to do a little promo. Once again, if you are interested in getting to the next level of private equity, send me your resume. Well, I potentially can have you as a guest. I need to review it, okay, for you. Okay, I need to review your resume to see if you can be a guest. We now have 2 slots. I just gave away 1, and we have 2. So here's some things coming in. I was looking in the wrong chat, but here it is. Great antidote with Spain story, usually aligning with the team and getting staff involved to solve a problem. Takes time. How do you balance that with the need for speed? That's one question. Let's see, another one, Jeff Pogge, stakeholder management, communication, alignment on the goal. Larry Perrette, job security of an impacted party makes the resistance to change. So he's just making a point. And then that is what they're answering to your question. So you
Great.
answered the question, job security.
That's terrific because we're going to hit exactly that as we go through here. Absolutely the right questions, and people struggle with those. That's why we're here.
And Gloria, the change is sometimes blocked by the founder, staff, or executive team that is always comfortable the way it's already done. So we all get in the ruts. And then Jonathan says failure of leadership to adopt the model of change. So back to you again, folks. If you want to be a guest in the Blackmore Connects conference, October 25th, it'll be our 45th conference in a row. It's virtual. Send me your resume or LinkedIn profile, and then if approved, I'll send it to Chris Melton. He has final approval. Thank you. Back to you, Paul.
Okay. All right. So here are 4 pieces, 4 core elements that you need to get to ignite that happening. We're not talking about, let's do this sometime. We're talking about igniting it. So first, build trust. And we'll talk about each one of these. Build trust, which means eliminate fear, recognize employee knowledge, get very quickly to reality. Reality is your friend if you're prepared to deal with it. If you're not, that's another issue. Build momentum. Make employees part of the solution and implement the change now and ensure continuity. Let's go through each one of those. Building trust. Absolutely first piece, eliminate fear. What's the first thing that people hear about when maybe this transition to private equity has occurred or a consultant shows up? What's the first thing in their mind, people's mind? Somebody is going to get fired here, and I hope it's not me. That fear of losing their job is absolutely paramount. Then there are others that also occur, like, oh, how will this affect me, even if I'm not afraid of my job? I'm still, I don't know how this is. If you don't address this up front on day one, your initiative is already dead and you don't know it. Eliminate fear. One thing we emphasize, and we make this clear with the management beforehand, but now we're talking to the assembled employees. And the message is, this is not about low-hanging fruit. This is not about low-performing employees. This is about, when we work together, this is about productivity and growth for the company, which we will achieve. And you're going to see that happen quickly. So that's one piece. And the second piece is upfront to acknowledge they are the ones who know what really happens in the company every day. These are two things maybe the employees never heard before and maybe never heard at the same time, but essential pieces. And when you do that, our experience, right up front, we're there because there's some reason that tomorrow can't be a rerun of today. Our message is we are going to listen to you as you work and where you work and capture that information because you are the ones who really know what's happening here. And that, along with some other pieces that we're going to cover, these all happen more or less at the same time, even though I've listed them, get immediate, literally day one, buy-in to change across the company. Let that sink in for a minute. That's part of igniting productivity and growth. So get quickly to reality. And what does that look like? Well, we have all of our processes and interactions that we've looked at. Who knows how those really work? Second principle, good news, the employees. Well, that's an interesting fact. The question is, how do we get their buy-in, participation, and contribution to change? One thing that has been tried, one approach is to say, well, we're going to define how things are going to work. What's the new deal here? We'll document that so we understand it. We're then going to take that and try to train the employees to do that, try to get their buy-in to something that happened without their involvement. And then we're going to audit the heck out of it to make sure that people are doing what they were instructed to do. I mean, yeah, we have all these sheets that somebody signed. Yeah, I understand what this process is and I'm going to follow it. And that's as good as the value of the paper there. Our favorite approach is let's turn that upside down. Let's start with what are they really actually doing? Not what are the problems. We're going to see plenty of that. What are they actually doing? Because we know that's what they're bought into at some level. This is what we do. Now, they may have some great ideas, and we're going to unlock those, but they understand how it works. If we capture that, then capture and document that, now we have the real system. And we've taken action to demonstrate what we said, that we respect their knowledge of how things work. We're not unplugging the management and leadership of where are we trying to go. We're creating a basis to have the whole organization participate and accomplish that. Capture the real processes and interactions. These are some examples, live company. We're looking across all the functions. What do they actually do? These are what I call natural processes. There's a logical start point, a logical end point, and you can see the whole process on a single sheet of paper. We pull all of those together. So we have a top-level diagram of the whole company. We call that a visual twin. Now, here's relevant to what questions people ask. If you do this in 2 years, nobody cares. If you do it in 6 months, nobody cares. Too many paychecks between now and then. But if you do this in weeks and implement as you go, the effect is absolutely transformational in the company. You can very clearly see how the real process works, who's responsible for what the data flow is, complexity, lots of visibility on opportunities for improvement, because guess what, as you go through this, and we're going to hit this in the next section, the employees have ideas. They have knowledge of what can be better. This is all a part of building momentum. Make them part of the solution and implement the change now. We have this. We have all of these ideas. We have all the real process. you may see on some of these, I'm not sure you can see it in this view, but there are red flags on things that say, here's an area that there's something here that doesn't happen the way we need it to, and we can address that, and implement change immediately as you proceed. So I cited that automotive company. Built this 3-shift operation, $30 million company in 30 days, 75 issues resolved just as we built this. $300 million company took a little bit longer, same kind of effect. Okay, what's interesting is how this feels as you go through this. Employees become a fountain of ideas. People chase us down to say, hey, this happened. You got to see it, because I know if you see it and we get it identified, captured in the process, we're going to address it. Supervisors leading process change. In that automotive company I cited, all of the supervisors stopped taking their smoke breaks and came in and to talk about process change that they wanted to see. Folks who aren't normally at the van of that kind of thing. But that's how it feels. Company had severe chronic absenteeism, record number of perfect attendance awards in a very short period of time. Adopt paper to electronic in 3 weeks. People say, well, that's a really tough transition to make, because people, they want to stay on the paper, and whole company, entire production inventory system to electronic in 3 weeks. And critical, all the credit to management and employees. This is not our system. It's the company system. And all of the attitudes that are developing are in the company. There's a cultural piece here. I'm not going to go into it in depth, but there's 4 pieces there. Action, repeated, becomes habit. Habit across the whole organization becomes behavior. I expect somebody else to behave like this. And there is your improvement-seeking culture. Okay, specialty chemical case. Initial state, failed integration 50% on time. Their ideal was 87. Doing this visual twin, we identified and simultaneously 14 key initiatives with the people in the organization. And the actual implementation, before we did anything with technology, we got 86% on time in full in 5 months, 3 months faster than the management thought was their base case. So
6 minute warning, 6 minute warning, 6 minutes.
Say again?
We have 6 minutes, and I do have a question.
Ensure continuity. So safe environment for change, improvement-seeking culture, and an environment to attract and retain employees. Everybody's struggling with this. Do this internally to attract and retain. Data matters, so process knowledge clarifies the data you need, and with that data you get insights that will drive performance. Pay attention to where the data is coming from. Typical environment, Excel everywhere, tribal knowledge, rules of thumb, unreliable data, lack of ownership. You need to address all of those issues. The visual twin gives you the hooks to do that. People look the same way, Excel everywhere, different names. If you're looking at IoT, there's a flood of data there, and you need to pay attention to that. So now we're going to hit technology. These are digital transformation elements that you may be wanting to pursue. Question, why not just do those before we go through this understanding how the processes work and getting the people engaged? Well, here's our processes. If we just layer it on top, what we get is IT and business disaster. No buy-in, extended implementation, rework, blown budgets, business objectives that don't get met. Key part of this transformational productivity and growth is use all of those steps to identify what you need and create an environment that lets you implement that on an ongoing basis. So we've covered most of these results. We did after we got to 86%, large scale ERP extension 6 months faster than the vendor thought, including resolving some software issues, and we did the full plant cutover in 4 hours. These are some of the pitfalls. rounds, rework, low performance, over budget. There's a quick summary of the things that we had touched on in transformational change, and 3 key pieces: immediate buy-in to change, speed, as we said, and sustainable, scalable results. Go ahead, Gerald.
One of the questions that came up is someone not sure they understood the visual twin concept. Can you go back and review it? That will be the only question we'll be able to get to. And before we get to that question, as Paul's bringing that back up, I want to remind you, if you want to be a guest at one of our private equity conferences, you need to send me an email right now with your LinkedIn profile and or resume and your biggest P&L. Go ahead, Paul. Visual twin concept. What is it? Can you please explain the visual twin again?
Sure. This is literally every process in the company, front to back, top to bottom. How does it all work? If you had never seen this company before, you could walk through this in short order and you would know exactly how things. That's the visual twin of the company. This may be 80 processes, in something maybe 250 processes, but they're all interrelated. Capture what that reality is in order to be able to see where those improvement opportunities are, and to get at the same time the employee buy-in to doing that, because they're participating, they're contributing, their ideas are being incorporated in here, and that's part of the igniting process, and that's what lets you engage the whole organization to take you up to the next level. By the way, any questions that didn't get answered, I'll get a copy of the chat after. I'll be happy to get back to you.
We answered all of them. So, Paul, I want to just thank you for an extraordinary summer. I want to get you on my docket once a quarter, okay? I want to do one with you. You really have a brilliant mind, and I want to continue to widen the audience, your access to our audience, okay? And Sarah, get those set up. Let's go. Thanks, everybody. This ends the webinar.